Hello Enigmas, welcome to our first top 8 video series on classical guitar and all there is to know about this fabulous music genre brought by your host, Delia. Today we're counting down our picks for the top 8 most popular classical guitar pieces of all time. For this list, we have brought you a compilation of those monumental classical guitar pieces that have left an important legacy in the history of classical music. These prestigious compositions that we're about to discuss are a must-know for every single classical guitarist out there, and also, to those who are not into the classical guitar genre, they must have heard them at least once in their lives. If you're interested in classical music and you wish to know more about music tops, start now by subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. Number 8. Danza Paraguaya by Agustin Barrios. Our first entry takes us to the South American Republic of Paraguay, the land that gave birth to the cacique of classical guitar, Agustin Barrios. Danza Paraguaya, which means Paraguayan dance in Spanish, is one of Barrios' most iconic masterpieces. The Paraguayan composer takes the traditional dance of his country and makes it a jewel suitable for any guitar repertoire. Being a virtuous piece, it requires the performer to dedicate a lot of time to practice hand stretching and perfect coordination of both hands, and for reasons like this is that Danza Paraguaya is a cultural icon of Paraguayan music that puts this country on the eye of every classical guitar lover who enjoys the music of Agustin Barrios. Number 7. Tango in Sky by Roland Diens. This can't be a top if we do not include this piece of art by the virtuoso modern French composer Roland Diens. Though Tango in Sky has a basic tango rhythm as its name suggests, it will test the technique of every single guitarist who dares to learn it. Roland Diens was a performer who was known for improvisation in his concerts, and as a result of his improvised concerts, Tango in Sky came to life, and it wasn't until the year 1985 that it was officially published. Roland Diens' charisma has been secreted in this composition, and hearing every single note of it is now very touching to the sentiment of all those performers who enjoyed his music until he departed from this life in 2016. Being Tango in Sky the best representation of his legacy, Roland Diens will forever be remembered as one of classical guitar's most important composers in modern history. Roland Diens, please rest in peace. Number 6. Capricho Arabe by Francisco Tarrega. This piece brings us to the epicenter of classical guitar history, where the vast majority of composers and maestros came from, the European country of Spain. Being Francisco Tarrega one of the most important composers of the genre, he brought this masterpiece to the world in the year 1892 after a long journey in Andalusia. He dedicated this piece to one of his best friends known as Thomas Breton, who was a prestigious violinist from Spain around the same generation of Tarrega. Given the music legacy that Capricho Arabe brought to Spanish classical guitar, on the day of Francisco Tarrega's burial on December 20, 1915, a group of musicians gathered together around his coffin and performed the masterpiece as an epic farewell commemoration, making it one of the most emotive moments in classical guitar history. Number 5. Romance Anonimo, Unknown Composer. When it comes to memorable compositions of classical guitar, Romance Anonimo is always one that comes to the mind of all listeners and performers when referring to the genre. What makes this piece very enigmatic is the fact that nobody knows who the original composer was. However, some experts theorize that the piece was probably composed by Francisco Tarrega, but this theory has been rejected for the reason that its musical structure differs from the style that Tarrega normally used to compose his masterpieces. Due to the aforementioned, it is that this piece has been given the adjective of Anonimo, which means anonymous in Spanish. Even though Romance Anonimo is an easy piece to learn and perform, it has managed to become an icon of classical guitar music, making it one of the most prestigious and well-known compositions of all time. Number 4. La Catedral by Agustin Barrios. Another masterpiece by a Paraguayan cacique of classical guitar makes a spot on our list, and there are good reasons why La Catedral takes its place. First of all, when it comes to Agustin Barrios' compositions, this is the very first masterpiece that every performer wants to learn. On the other hand, La Catedral is known to be one of the most difficult classical guitar pieces of all time. Consisting of 3 different movements, Preludio Saudade, Andante Religioso, and Allegro Solemne, each of these are pure music poetry and the best representation of the legacy of Agustin Barrios. Also, it is good to know that Barrios originally composed only the Andante Religioso and the Allegro Solemne as part of the first version of La Catedral in 1928. But it was not until the year 1939 that Barrios decided to add the first movement, the Preludio Saudade. Although some people reject the first movement as being part of La Catedral, it fits perfectly with the rest of the work and is a great work in its own right. Without it, La Catedral wouldn't be the same masterpiece as we know it today. Number 3. Recuerdos de la Alhambra by Francisco Tarrega. Once again, we have another piece in our list by the Spanish virtuoso Francisco Tarrega. This time we bring a composition showcasing a challenging guitar tremolo technique to be performed by most advanced players. The masterpiece refers to the Palace of Alhambra, which is surrounded by a fortress complex in the province of Granada in Spain. As of the poetic meaning that Tarrega put into the tremolo of the piece, it makes a representation of the water fountains inside of the Alhambra. Recuerdos de la Alhambra is the most famous example of the use of tremolo on guitar music, and given its importance, is that it is up to date the most well-known tremolo masterpiece to have ever existed. Number 2. Asturias Leyenda by ALBENIZ. We had to see this coming to the highest ranks of this list. It is predictable to bring this classical guitar masterpiece to the minds of all those who enjoy this music genre. Also, it will be very disrespectful not to have Asturias ranking this high on the list. Being originally written in piano by the Spanish maestro ALBENIZ, it was transcribed into classical guitar years later. Some music experts attribute the first classical guitar transcription to Francisco Tarrega. However, other scholars say that the piece was probably transcribed by Severina Garcia Fortea. Regardless of who is the original musician who transcribed Asturias into classical guitar, the most popular, influential, and universally accepted version of Asturias we all know today is the one made by the legendary Spanish maestro Andrés Segovia. Besides, Asturias is considered to be one of the masterpieces to trigger the birth of the music genre flamenco, which is derived from classical guitar compositions that originated from Andalusia in Spain. And for reasons like this, it is that Asturias deserves to be number 2 on our list. Before we continue with our number 1 pick, be sure to subscribe to Delay Music and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Make sure you click on all notifications, and if you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. And now, before we unveil what we have for you on our number 1 pick, here are 4 honorable mentions. Number 1. Concierto de Aranjuez by JOAQUIN Rodrigo. You can't explain the history of classical guitar music if you do not include JOAQUIN Rodrigo's Concierto de Aranjuez in it. A masterpiece written in early 1939 in Paris, its composition was strongly influenced by the political context that Spain was facing post-Spanish Civil War. The Concierto de Aranjuez, consisting of 3 major movements, is known to be one of the longest and most prolific pieces of Spanish music, and also to be the best representation of orchestral classical guitar. The Concierto de Aranjuez was inspired by the gardens at Palacio Real de Aranjuez located in Madrid, Spain. Being a complex masterpiece that involves the participation of an orchestra to be performed, the guitar is never overwhelmed by the other musical instruments, which makes the guitar the protagonist instrument from beginning to end. The most curious thing about JOAQUIN Rodrigo is that even though he composed the most iconic classical guitar masterpiece in the music history, he did not play the guitar, and yet he still managed to capture and project the role of the instrument in Spanish music. And for all we've discussed so far is that Concierto de Aranjuez is the most popular classical guitar masterpiece in the world. So what do you think about this, Enigmas? Do you agree with our top 8? What classical guitar pieces do you think are the most popular ones? Please let us know through your comments what you think. Do not forget to share, like, and comment on this video. Your host Delia will always be here on Delia Music to inform you about music and perform classical guitar masterpieces. We hope you, Enigmas, have enjoyed this video. Until we meet again.